Is everybody having a productive day here at Business Expo? Everybody? Come on, we're having a very productive day, aren't we? Well, it's going to get a little bit more productive because we're going to be talking to a great lady. We're going to be talking about how to anchor your client and how to become the company of choice. I'm going to be talking with our guest speaker, Nancy Butler. And before we start our little conversation, I would like to give you a brief bio of Nancy and tell a little bit about her story. It's quite fascinating. At age 31, while in the process of a divorce, Nancy took her 2 daughters with no child support, with no alimony or other source of income. They moved 70 miles away, and she decided to start a business. Now that takes guts. And lo and behold, she built the business from scratch to over $200 million in assets under management and with over 1,200 clients. That's an amazing story unto its own. In 2007, Nancy sold her business, and although she financially no longer has to work, she wanted to find a way to give back, to tell her story, to share her experiences with other people, to talk about life experiences and success in business. And now Nancy is a professional speaker on topics to help individuals live a successful life and realize their dreams. She also teaches continuing education classes to financial advisors and insurance professionals to enable them to renew their licenses and continue to run ethical businesses. Nancy is one of the few certified divorce financial analysts. Where were you 25 years ago, Nancy? Sorry about that. And has testified in court as an expert witness regarding the financial aspects of divorce. And she's been quoted on many national and local and national publications, including USA Today, The Day, and has been a speaker for major corporations, including Pfizer, General Dynamics, and Dow Chemical Company. Nancy has also been a guest on several live television shows and radio call-in shows. And her first book, which was just released in September, is Above All Else, Success in Life and Business. Nancy Butler. Okay. Wow. I just want to start. I received Nancy's book last week, and I did a read on it, and I really read the book. A lot of people ask me if I really read the book. It's a fantastic read. It's an inspirational story. It's something that I think everybody really needs to take advantage of, and I know she's got books over there that she's going to sell and autograph later on. But a couple questions I'd like to ask Nancy, and really to get your story out there. What inspired me most about this book was how it showed the courage you had to face your fears and not just step out of your comfort zone, Nancy, but literally leap out. What really motivated you? What gave you this fearlessness when all of this adversity happened in your life?
I'm a firm believer that people can do pretty much anything they want in life if they want to bad enough. I felt that I really didn't have a choice. I had 2 daughters that I was going to be responsible for. Their father was not in the picture. I mean, he was there, but financially he was not in the picture. And we had just moved 70 miles away. If I did not do well in my business, my kids wouldn't eat. So if that's not motivation, I don't know what is. So it was just a matter of making sure I did the right thing. The other part of it, though, for me was not just being successful. It's how I became successful, doing the right thing. I'm a firm believer if you do the right thing, the money will come. And I needed to know that at the end of the day, I could look back and feel really good about the way I treated people, the way I ran my business, the way I treated everybody around me. And at the end of my life, I feel the same thing. So motivation, probably financial need was the main motivation. I was offered a position at a higher pay than I had ever had in my life, but it was a salary job, and I turned it down because they were hiring me at the top of the ladder. And at the age of 31, you don't want to feel like you're already at the top of the ladder. So to me, stepping out of the comfort zone and instead starting my own business at the bottom of the ladder, the sky's the limit. So it just told me that if I worked hard at this, I wouldn't be stuck at the salary that they were going to pay me, even though it was a great salary for me, that the whole future was there. And I have 2 daughters, so I felt it was important that they see what a woman can do, and that you can do pretty much anything.
Excellent. I mean, that you were focused. I mean, it was obvious you were focused to go from zero to over $200 million company in a relatively short time. One of the things that you talk about in your book is ethics and truly caring about your client. And that's really about doing the right thing by your clients. There's something in the book that really intrigued me about every time your company sent you a new manual that talked about the pay scale and how you were paid in terms of your compensation. Tell us, share with us what you did with those.
Well, first let me explain, because we said I'm self-employed and then you said the company sent. So they need to have an understanding of that. The business that I started was financial planning and asset management. And when I started it, again, I knew absolutely nothing. I had never owned a mutual fund, stock, or anything else. But I felt that even if the job didn't work out, who cares? What I would learn about financial management would make it worthwhile for me in raising my kids. So that's the business I started. However, like I said, doing things right and ethically is really important. So whenever the company would send a manual that had how we were paid on the thousands of products that I could use, because I was self-employed, I owned the office, I owned the real estate the office was in, I had my own staff that I paid after many years of not having any staff. But you cannot do that on your own. You have to be connected to a broker dealer, someone else, and that's who was sending the booklet of how I was paid. I never took the shrink wrap off. I threw it in the garbage because I was afraid if I opened it and I knew how I was going to be paid for something, it might, even in the back of my mind somewhere, without me realizing it, it might sway me to give somebody something because of the way I was paid, and I didn't want that to happen. So I just never took the shrink wrap off, threw it away, and I'm a firm believer, you do the right thing, the money will come. Oh, you have one now?
I have one.
Okay.
Can everybody hear me? No? Gwen, can you hear me? Okay. With respect to what really prompted you to write this book in the first place? I mean, you didn't have to write it. You were successful already. You sold your company. I mean, what gave you the impetus, and what was the motivation to write a book?
Starting a business from scratch and building it the way I did, of course, was not easy. Doing it on my own was even less easy. Being that I was able to do that successfully, I didn't want to die with the knowledge that I've acquired in how to build a business and run it successfully. And by being a public speaker, by writing a book, I'm also a paid consultant to businesses across the country. It enables me to pass on some of the knowledge so that I can help them be successful too.
Fabulous. One of the things I'd like to ask you is, you know, there's a lot of business owners there that are either starting a business or thinking about starting a business, and there are those out there who have already taken the plunge. Looking back at what you've accomplished, I mean, is there anything that you would do differently? Is there anything that you would take a different path with respect to?
There's a whole lot of things I would do differently.
Let's talk about
I think
that.
we would all say that, but the one thing I would pass on to others as far as what you need to think about and do differently is so many of the businesses that I even coach, and it applied to me too. For 15 years out of the 25 years I was in business, I had no staff. I did everything myself because I felt like I had to build up the business enough before I could afford to hire someone to bring them in, and boy was I wrong. Do not wait until you can afford it, because what you're doing is you're spending your time doing $10 an hour, $12 an hour work, when you as the owner of the business should be doing $200 an hour, $300 an hour work. And if you hire the right person with the right fit for your business, they're going to be better at those things than you are anyway, and it'll free up your time to bring more money into the business. So as soon as I started doing that, that's when the business really took off. And it was hard. I mean, I was a single parent. I had a child in college that I was paying $26,000 a year for. I had no alimony, no child support, no other source of income, and I went and hired staff because it freed me up to build the practice to 1,200 clients.
So that was a practical choice. I mean, you didn't cheap out on it. You basically bit the bullet and
Well, and I starting to hire, when I first started to hire someone, I didn't do it right. I thought, okay, I'll hire someone. I'll get a high school kid after school to do filing. Then I don't have to do filing. Well, the first time I sat in front of a client and couldn't find a paper that I needed because they had filed it in somebody else's file, that was the last time I used a high school student. You get what you pay for. So don't be cheap about it. When you go to hire someone, hire the right person for the right job. Let me give you another way to look at it, because this is how I ran my office. Whenever we hired anyone, even when I brought in someone to partner with me so that I could eventually sell the practice, I never looked for a clone of me. I would have them sit down and figure out all the things they're good at, that they love doing, and if they did it all day, by the end of the day, they'd be energized and feel great when they left and be glad to come in the next day. I'd also have them sit down and figure out all the things that they've had to do for work that they really don't like doing, they're not good at it, and it makes them miserable. I did the same thing for myself first before I hired anyone else. So my goal was that I would have an office where everyone in the office was doing what they were best at, what they enjoyed doing, and we'd have somebody else doing all the other things and that they were best at and they enjoyed doing. I sold the office in 2007, so it's 5, almost 6 years now, and all my staff are still there. And that just feels great because we had the right people for the right job, doing the right thing, paying them appropriately.
Excellent advice. Now, in getting to the heart of our conversation, you're talking about how to anchor your clients, or how to anchor our clients and make them loyal to your business. We all know that, keeping our existing clients is much more cost effective than going out and bringing in new clients. What suggestions do you have for small business owners to help keep their clients from going elsewhere, to help anchor them to your company and not the competitors?
Good question. There's a lot of things you can do, but I'll give a couple of specific tips. I've even gone out and taught groups of people on this. Here's how I would want you to think about it. And it's hard for me to turn that way when my microphone's over here. Here's how I would want you to think about it. If there were 10 other companies that do the same thing you do, they're all within 10-minute ride of where your office is or your business is. They all do the same thing, provide the same service, have the same pricing, and basically do what you do. Why should the client, when there's one client that's got to decide out of all these companies who they're going to go to, why should the client come to you? What makes you better? What makes you different? What makes you stand out? Give you some ideas on some of the things that we did that I think made us better, made us stand out. First, let's talk about the stand out. When I started in business, of course, I had no money, and marketing is a huge thing, or how can you build up a business if you can't do marketing? So one of the first things I did was I determined that getting in front of one person at a time was not going to build my business quick enough. I had to get in front of large groups of people quickly so that I could have a lot of prospective clients rather than 1 or 2 at a time. Now you can do it online, but back in '81, you couldn't do it online. There was no online. So I would go to the local library, and there's a card file of all the local clubs and organizations, and it's online now for most libraries. It would say what the organization does, who's the person who runs it, where do they meet, when do they meet, and I would go through that and log in all of the companies that I thought, organizations that I thought would be great for me to be a speaker for. Then I would send out a letter twice a year with my bio and a couple of bullet points, because you don't want to give them a lot of printed information or it'll go in the garbage. There has to be a lot of white space with just bullet points on how you can help them. And I would say, I didn't get an immediate response, but I would say after about 2 years, I spoke somewhere monthly, probably for the next 25 years. And it cost me nothing because I was a speaker for them. So how did that get me to stand out? All the organizations in the area knew who I was. They had my bio, they knew what I could do for them, and they didn't get that from anyone else. And let's think about it from the other side of things, because I personally belonged to 9 different nonprofit organizations at the time, and for a couple of them, I was responsible for getting speakers, and it was a royal pain in the neck. And I kept thinking, gee, if somebody would just send me something, how am I going to find these people otherwise? And then the light went on, I can do that. And so then I started a campaign where twice a year, went to the library, updated the information, sent it out. So one way to get yourself to stand out is make sure the public knows who you are. They may not need your service today, they may not need it tomorrow, but eventually when they do need it, it's got to be your face and your name that they're thinking of. One time I taught an adult education class, and when I walked in, the woman says, "Oh, it's you." I said, "Do I know you?" She says, "I've had your picture on my refrigerator for 4 years." She says, "I've been meaning to call you." And she says, "Now I don't have to." So all you need to do is have people know who you are, get your name out there. My kids used to be so upset because we could even be on a plane to Florida, get off the plane, and I remember being at baggage claim and people running up to me and, "Aren't you so-and-so?" And the kids would say, "Everybody knows who you are. How come everybody knows who you are?" That's the point. After about 3 to 5 years of heavily marketing, I did no marketing for 15 years, and I was booked 6 weeks in advance. If someone called and wanted to speak to me, it would be 6 weeks before they could speak to me. They'd have to speak to somebody else in the office, and 6 weeks before they could sit down with me. So make sure the public knows who you are. That's number one. And then number two, what makes you different? Okay, fine. So they know who I am. They know who a lot of other financial advisors are too, maybe not in the same way, but they do know, and my face is in front of them on average once a month between radio, television, or newspaper. So how do you stand out? How do you make it different? I don't know what businesses you're all in, but I'll give you an example. I recently did a 2-day workshop for a group of realtors. They were a whole room full of realtors, and they'd been in business a long time. Well, think about that industry. The real estate market is terrible right now. And if anybody wants to buy or sell a home, there's tons of realtors to go to. So how would a realtor make themselves stand out and be above and beyond who you would first want to pick? And there's so much they can do. So some of the things I suggested to them, for example, is when I went through all the ads in the paper before I did this talk with them to see how they were all advertising themselves, and they all look the same. One ad's the same as another, same as another. Instead, what they need to do was I picked some things out of their competition that I saw that really stood out. For example, one person had a moving truck, and they said, "If you buy or sell from me, you get to borrow this truck for the weekend free to move, so it won't cost you." Simple. Even if the guy rented it for him for a weekend, wouldn't it be worth a couple extra bucks to rent a truck to make a $3,000 sale or $5,000 sale? So you need to kind of think out of the box. Some of the things I did for my clients, I said we did no marketing, but I did a client event once a year. A real upscale, great client event. And we did not invite everybody. We invited the clients who we felt were most appropriate to go to this event. You may be familiar with, for example, the Mystic Aquarium. Oh, sure. One time I had them close the entire Mystic Aquarium and we rented it out for my clients. We hired lemos to pick up our best clients to bring them to the event. I mean, out of the box. Who the heck ever does stuff like that? Are those clients still there? All those clients are still there, and I've been out of the practice for 5 years. So you need to think about, without ever putting any other company down, there's a million realtors, there's a million banks, there's a million of everything. You never ever will put anybody else down, but you need to find what makes you stand out and why, if they had 10 people to pick from that did the same thing, why you're the one they should see.
You know, that's pretty interesting marketing strategy when you stop and think about it. And you built a business by going out and getting in front of people. That took a lot of courage. I mean, you were never trained as a public speaker. You just got up and tell us a little bit about how you overcame some of that, because I know a lot of people just freeze and they just can't do that. Can you give any advice on what it takes to
Sure. When I first started in business, even when I wasn't publicly speaking, when I would sit with a client, I spoke continuously because I was afraid if I shut my mouth for 2 minutes, they might ask a question and I wouldn't know the answer and I'd feel like an idiot. So I felt if I just kept talking, they can't ask me anything and then it'll be okay. After about a year, I think it took all of a year, I realized I was sitting there and not talking so much. And as soon as I stopped talking so much and truly listened to the client and questioned the client on what was important to them, it made my business really take off because now I could provide to them what they really needed, not what I thought they should have. Once I realized that, then I also realized the public speaking was great because if I can do it in front of an individual, what difference does it make if it's one person, 10 people, or, I mean, I've spoken to groups as large as 4,000. It doesn't bother me.
It's fabulous. That is, plus it's one-on-one, it's engaging with people. And I'm sure you've gotten leads, not just leads initially, but referrals after that as well.
If you're concerned about speaking, think of it this way. There is not one single person on this earth, no matter what degrees they have, no matter how many years they've been in business, that knows everything about anything. So it's okay to not have all the answers. If I got up on stage and I was speaking for 3 hours on a question and answer, and I didn't know a quarter of them, so what? I'm not perfect. Nobody is. And sometimes having your audience know that you're honest and you'll tell them when you don't know. But I'll tell you what, even though I don't know, I have all the resources and I can find out for you. I just might not be able to tell you the answer right now. And I don't want to guide you wrong. So, fine.
Excellent. Now, as you're getting leads and going and prioritizing your lists and going after new business, when you get clients and when you start to service them, do you treat them all the same? In terms of customer service, is that important to treat all your customers the same?
That's another interesting question. I used to think that whether the client had $100 with me or $7 million with me, which I had both, they should all be treated the same. They're clients, until I realized I was wrong. No, they shouldn't. Because and this is a real extreme, $100 to $7 million, but let's use that as an example. The $100 client, not only do I not make anything every year off that client, but they cost me. Because just to have them come in and meet with me once a year to go over what to do with their $100 cost me the same amount of time as the person I'm sitting with for an hour with what to do with their $7 million. Is it fair to the clients that are paying me the most money for them to be subsidizing basically my ability to be able to service everyone else? So to me, that doesn't make sense. And you need your best clients. It's another way to anchor them to you. Those are the ones that are the most important that you really want to make sure you keep. And you need them to understand how much you value their business and have them stand apart. Remember I said a minute ago, we hired a limo to take the best clients to the aquarium event. I'm not hiring a limo for a $100 client to go to the aquarium event, but the $7 million client and maybe the $5 million, $2 million, $1 million, yeah, those I will. So do you provide the same level of service to every client? No. Do you provide a certain level of service to every client? Yes. Everyone coming into your business gets a certain level of service no matter what, because that's who you are and that's ethical and that's what you need to do. But above and beyond that, what are you doing differently for the better clients? And that's what you need to decide.
You know, at the time of the largest growth period in your business, how many people were in your organization? Was it just you, or did you have a staff of, and if so, how many?
When I had the most, I was the only licensed person, so I had to do all the trading and a lot of the work myself because you have to be licensed, but I had 4 full-time staff that did everything else. I'm a firm believer if you're the owner, you need to be the overseer. There's only a few things you should be doing and somebody else should be doing everything else. You should be seeing your customers. You should be strategizing the business on what you need to change to bring it to the next level. If you're going to do events, if you're going to put on, like I was saying, we did the client events each year. I never put the event together. I told the staff what I wanted. They put it together, but I got up on the stage and spoke. So I'll be up on the stage speaking. I'll be the one sitting working with the client. I'll strategize the cases, any paperwork that's going out, any finished product that's going out, basically has my name stamped on it. So I need to be okay with what's going out the door, but I don't have to do any of the things behind it to get it there. So what's most important is that you know the difference between what you should be doing and what you should be having other people do. And it got to a point where I had 4 full-time people to do everything else. And then it was my job to manage who I gave what to and how did I know it got finished. I tend to be overly organized. I always have been. I mean, the rule in my house when my kids were little, if you leave a room and I can tell you were in it, something's wrong, go back and put it the way it was when you entered it, and then you can leave the room. So I just like things organized, neat, and it just makes it easier to be able to run everything you have to run in a day.
Are you tough or tender?
A little of each, probably more on the tough side.
Tough side, yeah. To talk to your kids later. You know, a lot of, I was a small business owner way back as well, and we always, I remember I had an idea of what we wanted our business to be and what we could visualize it to be in a number of years. But there always seemed to be a disconnect, and the disconnect was you've got a vision of what you want your business to be, but you know, how do you put those into workable, manageable, and achievable plan to get it done? We always, a lot of us tend to not make it that far. It's easy to visualize, but it's hard to act and to make it happen. Any advice on how you overcame some of those issues?
Two things. The first thing I would talk about, which you probably are aware, is having a business plan. But there's 2 different kinds of business plans. There's the business plan you take to the bank or take to the financing company when you're asking for money for your business. But then there's your own personal business plan on what your goals are for that business and how you're going to get there. Secondly to that, which I'll talk about more in a minute, is even if you know all of that and you know what you need to do, the biggest problem for most business owners is they're so busy doing their business that they don't have time to step out of it all and truly think about what do I need to change to get it to the next level and when am I going to be able to do it? Where is the time? How are there enough hours in the day to get it done? So the first thing you need to do is set up a model week. And when that concept was first told to me, I said there is absolutely no way you are ever getting me to do a model week. When the phone rings, I need to be available. When the clients need me, I need to be available. When the staff needs me, I need to be available. Don't tell me that I do certain things at certain times and I can't be interrupted, because that's not how you run a business. Until I realized I was wrong. That is how you run a business. So what would happen is, for example, my best clients knew, well, let me word it this way. I've taken care of my 2 grandchildren twice a week for the last 15 years. So on Wednesday mornings, I would get up at 4 o'clock, watch them, get them off, be with them till 12, and then I'd go to the office. I am not a morning person. So I knew I was basically brain dead in the afternoon, and there's no way I'm working on big, complex $7 million cases. But I would take phone calls in the afternoon. But it was the only time, and it was only for my best clients. Because remember I said 6 weeks before you get to talk to me. My very best clients knew Wednesday afternoons from 12 to 4, if they called, I would take their call. Could they call other days? They can call whenever they want. But if they want to know they can speak specifically with me, that's when they get to speak specifically with me. And the staff would not interrupt me other times because I had other things I was working on. So by having a model week, what you do is you take a certain amount of hours a week, a month, a day, whichever way you're going to do it. You carve it out and do not allow anything to get in your way at that time. When I had that time, my door was shut, staff could not interrupt me, I did not take calls, and I had already prepared before that time exactly what I was going to be doing during that hour or 2 that I had set aside. And what it typically was how am I going to get the practice to the next level? Do I need to hire another person? Do I need to fire somebody? Do I need to change a certain system? What do I need to do? And that was my strategizing time where I did not allow myself to think about anything else. So the first thing you need to do is make sure you take time out of your business to work on your business, or it's not going to happen.
You know, you sound like you're a very disciplined individual. And unfortunately, a lot of us, a lot of people in business aren't. And I guess that's something everyone has to work on. But any idea of what advice you'd give to people who aren't as disciplined as you are?
Yes, because I wasn't at first either. If I answered the phone or if I was sitting in front of a client and they wanted an appointment, I'd fit them in anytime I could fit them in. So what I did was I hired someone who handled my appointments. And I said, this is my model week. These are when I see clients. If you go out of this, you are fired. So then I didn't have to be disciplined. I didn't have to do it anymore. I hired someone else to do the things that I could not do because it made me do it. The same thing when I worked with a client, we always had an agenda of what we were going to talk about. And there's some things you love doing and some things you don't. If I knew I was supposed to do something but really didn't want to, I would have the staff write it on the agenda because it was handed to the client, then I'd have to do it. So that's how I got myself to do the things that I knew I didn't want to do, was I had somebody else make me do it.
I wish I had that advice a long time ago. There's lots of things that a small business owner can focus on. There's marketing, there's staffing, there's product, there's learning and education. They have to be on top of things. There's so many things to focus on. And I know this is related to the last question, but it's a time management issue. But how do you suggest that they focus on the things that are most important?
That would go along with what we were just talking about. So it's a matter of setting up your model week and having time out of the day or the week when it's set aside specifically for certain things. Let me take that to a next level. Single parent. I had to get my kids to all their practices and all their whatever. Be at the school for this, be at the school for that, be home for dinner, be back at the office to meet with a client. The only way I could do it is if I had it all scheduled out. My kids even knew that if they had something coming up at school and they wanted me to be there, they'd go get my appointment book, because back then it was a Franklin planner or something that you wrote in, and they'd hand it to me and say, Ma, next Wednesday, 2 o'clock, book me in. And so they would even know. So the point is, you need to be able to manage your time better. One of the things I found that works for me, but everyone needs to work at what works for them. So I'll just give you an idea. The things I hate to do the most and dread and don't want to do, I do first. Because once they're out of the way, then I can truly free up my mind and focus on all the other stuff that I don't mind doing that'll help me to get the business where it needs to go. If you keep putting off that dreaded phone call to that client you don't like, or whatever it is that you need to do, then it's constantly on your mind, it's constantly dragging you down, and you cannot work at peak efficiency. So you need to get rid of the things that are clogging your mind so that you can free it up to really do what you need to do.
Nancy, what has given you the most joy from this whole experience of owning a business, of overcoming adversity, and I guess it's kind of like, what is your definition of success? What brings you the most joy?
That's a couple of questions, so I'll answer both of them.
Two for the price of one.
Most joy. 3 things in my life are the most joy, I would say. Business-wise, it's the fact that I was able to help thousands of people, and the fact that I have now been in business over 30 years, I saw people who, when they first came to me, wanted to put their kids through school, wanted to retire, wanted to buy a house, whatever it was they wanted to do. I helped them get there. I saw them put their kids through college. I saw them retire successfully. I saw them have their second home in Florida. That just feels really great, so that's on that side. Personally, my children, both of my daughters, one of my daughters is 46, and I have another one that's going to be 40 pretty soon. On their own, independent. I have grandchildren. They're both doing fabulously. That's a success. And even though I was in the middle of a divorce when I did that, I have remarried, and I've been married 20 years now, and we dated for 10 years before we got married, because I'm a planner and he's a planner, and we didn't get married till I filled out the last financial aid form for my kids, because they were going to count his income and assets against my kids getting financial aid. So as soon as we filled out the last financial aid form, then we got married a couple months later. So 3 successes.
Fabulous. Fabulous. All right. In your book, you have one of my favorite sections are the quotes. You have over 50 quotes actually, for success in life and in business. Share some of these with us. So tell us some of your favorite ones and why.
Okay. I'm not going to remember all of them off the top of my head, so I did write a few down. The first one, which you've heard me say before, is do the right thing and the money will come. If you're running your business based on, if you're working with your clients or your customers based on how much you're going to earn, odds are your business will not be as successful as if your clients know that you truly care about them and you want to do the right thing. A good salesperson solves a problem, doesn't sell something. They solve a problem. So you have to be really good at stepping out of yourself, stepping yourself in the other person's shoes, finding out what they really need. And sometimes it's true that they don't even realize what they need. I would say to clients, I understand that retirement's your main goal. However, I'll give you an example. You're only 45 years old. If something happened and you were sick or hurt tomorrow, you're retired tomorrow. So being retired and building money for when you're 60 isn't the only thing that matters. Making sure that you're going to have income between now and then, even though you didn't mention it as a goal, is my goal for you. So then we need to talk about it. So first thing is do the right thing, money will come. Next thing is it's progress that matters, not perfection. And if my youngest daughter ever heard me say that, she went at the roof. Because she would say, what are you talking about? You always want everything perfect. You don't think progress matters. But I do. Progress, not perfection. Whether it's your business, whether it's your personal life, whether it's your kids. Even with my kids, I truly did not care if they got an A or a D in school. What I cared about was were they doing the best they possibly could? And if the best they could was a C, fine. How can I fault them for not getting an A if they can't? But if they got a B and I knew they could get an A, they could be in trouble for that. So it's just do the best you can with what you have to work with. It's progress that matters, not perfection. So that would be another one. I do have a list. Let me get out a couple of others. Having proper systems in place in your business can enable you to only touch things once. That was a rule I had in my office. I only touch things once. So let me give you an example. If a client called and needed service, the staff were not allowed to give me a note that said, so-and-so called, here's the problem, call them back. They would be fired for that. Instead, they were to say, the client called, here's what they want, I set you up a phone appointment for a week from tomorrow to solve the issue. I've already contacted home office, I've already got on the computer, I've already looked at the problem. Here's all the paperwork you need to figure this out, and they will be calling you at this time on that day, and here's what you need. That's how I only touch things once. Because if they put the client through to me, all I'm going to do is ask them questions. Then I'm going to have to talk to them again. And it's not just the staff's issue, it's my issue as far as me training the clients to know that that's how we do things and that they will get their answers a heck of a lot quicker and more accurate if they tell my staff as much as possible so that the staff can help me solve it quickly because there's only 40 hours in a day or whatever hours in a week and I'm only one person, and I can't do it all. So it's training people to know that, training your clients and staff to know that they're the ones that need to help you. So touch things only once. If you find you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, something's wrong. You should be able to figure out a system, a way to make it run automatically. When I said we did client events, the first year we did it, documented it all in the computer. So next year I would say to the staff, we want a client event. They'd go to the computer, saw what we did last year and just redo it. And I didn't have to be involved at all. I just showed up at the end.
How did you come up with the title Above All? I know was that the name of your company first, or did you come up with the name of the book first, or how did that come about?
The day I sold my business, within a couple of days after, I set up a national speaking business and chose the name Above All Else, Success in Life and Business. When I decided to write the book a couple of years ago, I thought that would be great. We'd have the same name for the book as the business, and so that's how it turned out. It just kind of worked out well that way.
That's great. Great story. I've asked enough questions, so I'm going to open it up to anybody out there who might have some questions of Nancy about her book or about her business or about her life or about anything. So why don't we go ahead?
Do the right thing and similar to build it
And they will come.
But in reality, I work with a lot of startups who are doing the right thing, but the money isn't coming, and then they're going through the process of how do I pay the mortgage.
What business is it?
You know, whether it's coaching, a service, professional service, consulting, any kind of business, micro business, cosmetology.
Then they're not. Then they might be doing the right emotional thing, but they're not doing the right business thing. Either they're not marketing themselves correctly, they're not putting enough time and effort into the business to get in front of enough people, they're not charging appropriately, something else is out of whack. I do not ever believe that you have to not do the right thing for somebody to make money. You do, but you have to figure out what else you're doing that's incorrect to get you to where you want to be. So you said, for example, coaching. If they're doing all the right things, but they're not getting enough coaching clients, well, then they're not doing the right marketing. Maybe they haven't targeted their topic well enough to know exactly who they can speak at. They've got to get better at how to run a business, but that doesn't mean being unethical and not doing the right thing. They're just missing something else.
Okay, and I guess maybe tied to that is that the first 5 years where you said you were really heavily focused on marketing,
Right.
were you also generating enough income to sustain you?
It was tough. Oh, okay. She said that during the first 5 years, I said I did a lot of heavy marketing because I had no other income and was trying to build up this business. So the question is, how did I support myself during that time? Which is a good question because I told you I had no alimony, no child support, no outside income, and I had just moved 70 miles away. So I knew nobody and I had no contacts, and it was all up to me. Fortunately, the broker-dealer that I connected with put me on a draw. And what happened, what a draw is they pay you each week whether you earn it or not, and then you owe them until you pay them back. There did reach a point when I owed the company over $4,000, and I had worked more than I had ever worked in my life. I hardly slept, my face broke out, my hair turned gray, it still is, by the way. But, I mean, it was not a fun thing. I went to the company and sat them down and I said, look, I'm no quitter, but I'm not going down with any sinking ship either. I have been working my butt off. I'm doing the right thing. I'm working so many hours, and yet I owe you $4,000. Something's wrong with this picture. And he said, you're very good at this. He said, just keep at it, it'll be okay. Within the next 2 paychecks, I wiped out the $4,000. I had $7,000 check come in. Took my kids, said, I'm going to give you each $100. You can buy anything you want. We're going for lobster dinner. And from that point forward, the one thing you really have to focus on, I realized, in a lot of businesses, including mine, but including a lot of businesses, from the day you first see a client or a customer till the day you actually make money, in my business is months. Because you sit down and you work with them first, you gather all the information, then I have to evaluate it, then I have to put together a 100-page report, I have to figure everything out, and like a month or two later they come in, I go over it all with them, they go home and think about it, then it can be months. So when you're doing your marketing, I stopped marketing for my clients for tomorrow and next week and started marketing for my clients 3 months out. And I realized if I didn't have 3 months, remember I said I was 6 weeks in advance I was booked? If I didn't have at least 6 weeks to 3 months already booked with clients, I was doing something wrong, because if I'm worrying today about who I'm going to see tomorrow, I'm not going to have enough money to put food on the table. So you need to think in a business-wise, long-term, and what do you need to do today for 3 months from now's income? Because once that time comes, and you're always working 3 months out, you're always successful. The first couple of months, you're right, is really tough. And if I had a choice, meaning wasn't expecting this divorce and moving and everything. If I had planned it ahead, because I am a planner, I would have saved up the money first. But I couldn't. So, and again, that's what motivated me to get in front of a lot of people quickly and build the business quickly, because my kids wouldn't eat otherwise.
Any other questions for Nancy?
Yeah.
Dan.
Okay, so what I think I heard you say is you do a lot of things. You work full time, you volunteer, you have a lot of spinning plates, you have a lot on your plate, and managing it all can become very, very difficult. You just wondered if there were any kind of tips on how to pull that all together. The first thing I would say, is there any time for you? Okay, so you are taking time out to wind down, separate yourself from all of that, because if you don't step away from it once in a while, you're not going to be good at any of it, because it'll just run you into the ground. So you have to have some away time. That's number one. Number two, I was talking about the model week. The biggest problem I find with people in your situation, which is a lot of us nowadays, is we don't know how to say no, and we also want to be there for everybody. So it's really hard when you've got so much juggling. So if you have a model week and you know that, I mean, are you married, have kids that you're responsible for? So it's just you on your own with all these more business type things? Okay, then you should be able to control your schedule, I would think. Can you? You can, but you don't. That's the point. So then you either need to put a system in place that Mondays from this time to this time, this is what I do. Mondays from this time to that time, this is what I do. This day, I don't book anything because that's my cleanup day. I had Wednesday afternoons, I told you I would take calls, but I didn't see clients. Wednesdays was my cleanup paperwork day. And then Friday, at the end of the day, after watching the kids from 4 in the morning till 6, I would run into the office for a few hours, the grandkids, run into the office for a few hours, because I would want to clean up and know that the weekend was really mine and that I didn't have all this stuff in my head. Also, I think if you can get to a point, and I don't know what your business is, if it's possible, to plan ahead. For example, I had my clients book 6 weeks in advance. 2 weeks before the clients were coming in, I had a drawer with each of their folders and all of the work already done. And it was required to be there at least a week to 2 weeks prior to the day of their appointment. So you shouldn't be rushing around at the last minute trying to get stuff done, because that keeps you from being able to be efficient and juggle everything too, because too many things come in at the last minute that you have no control over. So like if the computer was down, what would I do if I didn't have that already prepared 2 weeks in advance? So I think the key to it is you've got to take control of your time, but you've got to set it far enough out that you've allowed the time you need for different things, and don't let something change that unless it really means a lot to you and you decide you want to change it. But if it's your own business, you're the one that's in control, and if you can't do it on your own, then maybe you need to hire somebody to keep you on task. Yeah. Some of the businesses that I coach, that's kind of what they coach me for. Is I was talking to somebody just yesterday that I was coaching, and I said, sorry this had to be a gripe session, but I really needed to yell at you for this whole hour. And she said, that's great, I'm glad you did, nobody else ever does. I said, well, I'm not going to just be your friend, I'm telling you, this is what you've got to do different if you really want to go where you want to go. Keep this in mind. If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten. So in order to get to the next level, you have to change what you're doing. You have to step out of the box, you have to find a different way to make it work so that you can get to the next level.
Okay, we have one time for one more question, and if not, Nancy, I think we're going to have to give up these cushy chairs. These are really nice. I don't know how we rated these chairs, but I could sit here all afternoon. Any other questions
She
before
has a
we let
question.
Nancy go? Okay.
Yes. Can you speak up a little? Yeah. College tuition for you or someone else? Okay. Try to figure out what? Okay. Yep. Okay, so let me make sure, correct me if I've got this wrong. For someone who's in job transition, so you're not working right now, but you're also going to college and need to pay for it. And what was the third thing? There was something else. And you have your own financial responsibilities for rent and food and all of that. How do you prioritize it? How do you decide? The first thing I would say, just to give you some information on this for yourself, how can I say this? As a single parent, having put 2 kids through college, I always thought that going through college, every parent or individual goes through the same thing as far as how to find financial aid, what's the best way to apply, all of that. So when I was putting my kids through school, I only touched things once, I started documenting it all and put it into a huge document that whenever I met with clients that were doing college planning, I could pass it off to them on this is what I did and this is how it works. So the reason I'm telling you that is for you with college, now is probably the best, easiest time for you to get financial aid. Because you are out of work, you are supporting yourself, and you're trying to go to school. Oh, I thought you said it was for you. Same thing, same thing. Are you responsible for your son? Your son lives with you? Same thing. Even if it's the midterm, I have gone back to the school and asked to appeal the financial aid that they gave us because my situation is not what it was at the time we applied. And every single time I appealed it, we got more money. But you have to have good reasons. So I'll give you just a couple of good examples. We lived in Connecticut. My youngest daughter went to USC in California. So not only did I have the cost of college, but I had to get her back and forth every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, spring break, and every summer. 4 times a year, round-trip airfare. In the summertime, they were not allowing her to keep her things on campus. I had to hire a truck, get all her stuff out. I had to put it in storage, hire another truck to put it all back. So I started thinking about this and said, wait a minute, you tell somebody who lives a block down the street in LA, this is what the college costs, and you tell me this is what the college costs. But that's not what it costs for me. I have all these other costs. So as soon as we went out there to look at the school, I contacted storage places, I contacted trucking companies, I got written estimates on everything, I kept a receipt of our airfare back and forth, and when her first financial aid package came out, do not refuse it because they'll give you nothing. I accept it, however I'd like to appeal it. This is not what school costs us. This is what school costs us. Here's my receipts, here's my proof. I think our financial aid should be based on that. And they said, okay. So you have to find good reasons, but there's tons of good reasons where you should be able to get more financial aid. So first of all, I would do that. I would work really hard now that you're in a position where you're entitled to more financial aid to get as much as you possibly can. So you might be able to get enough that's going to cover you, and what you can't get to cover you, the rest of it should be a student loan in your child's name. And I did that with my kids because I didn't want school to be a free ride and drinking and parties. I wanted it to mean something to them. So what I did for that daughter was I had as much in her name as possible. She didn't have to know that my goal was if she graduated in 4 years with a B or better average, I would take over all her loans as a graduation present, but she didn't need to know that. And if she dropped out or did not get a B average, then she was going to have to keep the loans. So she did graduate in 4 years. She did get a B average. On graduation, I said to her, if you want, I'll take over all your loans, or I know you want to stay in California, I'll buy you a car and pay for the first year of insurance. She took the car and first year of insurance. She's going to be 40 years old next year, and she just paid off her student loans about 6 months ago. But that's what she wanted. So there's a lot you can do. So priorities, you've got the time now. You need to spend the time to find out what financial aid's available. Next, you've got to pay your bills, your overhead, your clothes, food, and roof on your head. It's got to come first. Nothing else matters at this point. School and that is what matters at this point.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you all. I want to remind you that if you want a lot of this good advice and information, check out Nancy's book, Above All Else, Success in Life and Business. It's a great read, it's a great story, and I think you'll all get a good golden nugget out of it, whether it's about life experience or about success in business. So I want to thank you all for your time and for your attention, and also thank Nancy for being with us today. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.